The night rain hammered against the hospital window like bullets. New York City lights blurred into streaks of red and white beyond the glass. Elena Harper, lay in a sterile bed, machines beeping steadily around me. My body ached, but not from the car accident they told me I'd survived. No, the pain was deeper etched into my soul from a life already lived and lost. I remembered everything. In my previous life, I had been the perfect fiancé to Victor Kane, brilliant corporate lawyer, charismatic, impossibly handsome, the kind of man magazines put on covers. We met at Columbia Law, fell hard, built a life together in Manhattan's glittering upper circles. My family money, old steel, and real estate fortune merged seamlessly with his ambition. I became CFO of Harper Enterprises at 28. He made partner at 30. Everyone said we were unstoppable. Until I discovered the affair, not just any affair, with Sophia, my half-sister, the sweet girl my father brought home after my mother died, the one I raised like my own daughter, paid for her Ivy League tuition, gave her a vice president title at the company just to keep her close. Sophia, with her wide, innocent eyes and soft voice, had been sleeping with Victor for years. They didn't stop at betrayal. They wanted everything. Fake medical records claiming I had a psychotic break, planted evidence of embezzlement, a staged fall down our brownstone stairs that killed the baby I was 7 months pregnant with. The final touch, a slow poison disguised as postpartum medication. I died alone in this very hospital, tubes down my throat, while Victor and Sophia stood outside the glass, holding hands, already planning how to divide my inheritance. I watched it all after death like a ghost trapped in the corridor, heard them laugh about how easy it had been, how I'd signed the new will leaving everything to Victor just weeks before, how Sophia would finally stop playing the poor little sister. Then darkness. Then this. The monitor spiked as I sat bolt upright, gasping. A nurse rushed in, but I waved her away. My hands smooth, unscarred, no wedding ring. The calendar on the wall read March 15th, 2020. 5 years before the wedding. 5 years before the poison. I laughed until I cried. The sound scared me sharp, bitter. Nothing like the soft woman I used to be. God, fate. The universe, whatever had hit rewind, I wasn't going to waste it. Victor thought he was clever. Sophia thought tears could hide venom. This time, I would see them coming. This time, I would be the one who smiled last. I swung my legs over the bed, ignoring the dizziness. My phone lay on the side table. The lock screen photo was still us, Victor, kissing my temple at last year's New Year's gala. I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. Every trace, every memory that made me weak. When my father burst through the door 20 minutes later, face pale with worry, I was already dressed in the clothes he'd brought. "Elena, thank God. The doctor said you might not wake for days." I hugged him tight, breathing in the familiar scent of cedar and cigars. In my last life, he'd died of a broken heart 6 months after I did, believing every lie Victor fed him about my instability. "I'm fine, Dad, really." He pulled back, searching my face. "You look different." I smiled, and it felt like sharpening a blade. I feel different. On the ride home through rain-slicked streets, I watched the city I loved slide past and made silent promises. No more blind trust. No more playing the perfect daughter, perfect fiancé, perfect victim. Victor Kane was going to learn what happened when you tried to bury someone who already knew where all the bodies were hidden. The first week back was a masterclass in pretending. Victor arrived at the penthouse the morning after my discharge, arms full of white roses and worry etched convincingly across his perfect face. He knelt by the couch where I sat wrapped in cashmere, took my hand like it was made of glass. "Baby, you scared me to death." His voice cracked on cue. "I can't lose you." I let him hold me, let him press kisses to my temple, all while cataloging every micro-expression, the slight tightening at the corner of his mouth when I didn't immediately melt, the way his eyes flicked to my phone when it buzzed. In my previous life, I would have cried with relief that he cared so much. Now I felt nothing but cold calculation. "I'm okay," I murmured, stroking his cheek. "Just need rest." He stayed all day, working remotely from my home office, bringing me soup, reading case briefs aloud like nothing had changed. Sophia came in the afternoon, eyes red as if she'd been crying for days, carrying a basket of my favorite macarons from La Durée. Elena, I was so frightened. She sat on the ottoman, clutching my free hand. You're my only family. I studied her. Same delicate features, same practiced tremor in her lower lip. The performance was flawless. It had fooled me for years. I squeezed her fingers gently. I know. Soph, I'm lucky to have you both. That night, after they left, I poured a glass of wine I didn't drink and opened my laptop. First order of business change every password Victor might know. Second, quietly move half my liquid assets into new accounts he'd never seen. Third, install monitoring software on my own devices because paranoia was just advanced pattern recognition. Victor texted goodnight at 11:07 p.m. Exactly. Same as always. Sophia sent a heart emoji string at 11:09. I stared at the messages until the screen dimmed. The next few weeks slid into fragile normalcy. Brunch with friends who gushed over Victor's devotion. Board meetings where I smiled while Sophia presented reports I now triple-checked. Dinners at our favorite spots, Le Bernardin. 11 Madison Park, where Victor held my hand across white tablecloths and talked about wedding venues for next spring. Something intimate, he said over candlelight, eyes warm, just family and closest friends. Maybe the plaza. I nodded, sipping champagne. Whatever you want. Inside, I was ice. The first crack appeared at a charity gala for children's literacy. My mother's old cause. Victor was charming donors. Sophia radiant in emerald silk on his arm while I worked the room separately. I stepped onto the terrace for air and overheard them through the half-open French doors. We need to move faster, Sophia whispered urgently. She's asking questions about the offshore accounts. Victor's low laugh. Relax. The accident shook her up. But she's still the same trusting Elena. A few more months and the new will is ironclad. You promise I'll get the brownstone. Everything we planned, sweetheart. Just keep playing the loving sister. I pressed against the wall, heart hammering not with hurt, but with fury so pure it tasted metallic. They weren't even waiting until after the wedding this time. They were accelerating. I slipped back inside before they returned, accepted Victor's arm when he found me, laughed at his jokes, all while memorizing every word. Later, in the car home, he traced circles on my knee. You've been quiet tonight. Just tired. I leaned my head on his shoulder, thinking about the future. He kissed my hair. Our future's going to be perfect. I closed my eyes and smiled against his jacket. Yes, I thought it certainly will be. The following morning, I called Ryan Black. His name had always floated on the edges of our world ruthless tech investor. Victor's direct competitor in several hostile takeovers. Rumored to be dying of something he refused to name. In my last life, he'd stayed neutral, a ghost at parties. This time, I needed an ally who hated Victor almost as much as I now did. His assistant put me through immediately. Miss Harper? Ryan's voice was low, amused. To what do I owe the pleasure? I have a business proposition, I said, and a personal one, lunch today. A pause, intriguing. 12:30, my office. I hung up and stared out at Central Park, greening below. Victor thought he was hunting me. He had no idea the prey had grown teeth. The false calm was cracking, and soon the whole facade would come crashing down. The boardroom on the 42nd floor smelled of fresh coffee and fresh lies. Morning light sliced through the glass walls as Sophia presented the quarterly projections. Her voice smooth as silk, numbers glowing on the massive screen behind her. I sat at the head of the table in my usual chair, hands folded, watching every slide like a hawk. She'd buried discrepancies in 3 separate subsidiaries. Small transfers routed through shell companies in the Caymans, each one labeled consulting fees. In my previous life, I'd signed off without a second glance. This time, I'd spent the night tracing every wire. When she finished, the room applauded politely. My father beamed at her from across the table, proud of the girl he'd raised alongside me. Victor, invited as family counsel, leaned back with that satisfied smile he wore when everything was going according to plan. I waited until the chatter died down, then spoke quietly. Sophia, could you explain the 2.8 million routed to Meridian advisors last month? Their registered address is a P.O. box, and they have no employees. The room stilled. Sophia's eyes flicked to Victor for a fraction of a second long enough. She recovered with a soft laugh. Elena, you must be exhausted from the accident. Meridian is a legitimate strategic partner. I vetted them myself. I slid a folder across the polished mahogany. Here's the incorporation paperwork. Signed by you. And here's the bank statement showing the funds transferred the same day to an account controlled by Victor Kane. Gasps rippled around the table. My father's face drained of color. Victor sat forward slowly, expression shifting from amusement to something colder. Elena, this is serious. Accusing your sister and your fiancé of fraud in front of the board. Not accusing, I cut in, voice steady, stating, I've already forwarded everything to forensic accounting and the SEC tip line. Sophia's mask cracked. Tears welled instantly, perfect timing. I can't believe you'd do this to me, after everything I've sacrificed for this family. She turned to my father. Daddy, she's not well. The crash affected her. For a moment, I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. And it hurt more than I expected. In my last life, he'd believed her until the day he died. I stood. I'm perfectly well. And I'm done pretending. I looked straight at Victor. Both of you can leave this building. Security will escort you. The confrontation spilled into the hallway. Victor grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. You're making a mistake. Elena, you have no idea what you're starting. I met his gaze without flinching. I know exactly what I'm starting. And I know how it ends for you. He released me with a disgusted shove. Sophia sobbed into his shoulder as the elevators closed on them. Whispers exploded behind me, some shocked, some skeptical. By evening, the tabloids had the story, Harper heiress suffers paranoid break, accuses family of theft. Public opinion turned fast. Old friends texted concern for my mental health. Anonymous sources. Victor's plants fed stories of my supposed pill addiction after the accident. Stock dipped 3%. I became the unstable heiress overnight. That night, I sat alone in the penthouse, glass of bourbon untouched, watching the city glitter below. For the first time since waking up in that hospital bed, doubt crept in. Had I moved too soon, exposed too much without enough armor? My phone lit with a call from an unknown number. I answered. Miss Harper. A man's voice, older, hesitant. This is Dr. Marcus Reed. You visited my office last week about certain medical records from 5 years ago. The obstetrician who'd treated me during the pregnancy that never made it to term. In my previous life, Victor had paid him to alter files, claim I'd miscarried due to stress I caused myself. Yes, doctor. I've been thinking about what you said, about threats to my license. A long pause. I kept copies, off-site. If you still want them? Relief flooded me so sharply I had to sit. I do. Name your price. No price, just make sure they never practice medicine again. We met the next morning in a quiet cafe in Brooklyn. He slid a flash drive across the table scans of original ultrasounds, blood work showing poison traces mislabeled as routine vitamins, my frantic messages begging for help that were deleted from official records. Proof that the fall hadn't been an accident. Proof that the baby had been healthy until the end. I thanked him, voice thick. He left quickly, looking over his shoulder. That should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like reopening a grave. I made one critical mistake that week. I confided in Lauren, my college roommate, the one person I thought Victor couldn't touch. We met for drinks at a bar in Soho. I didn't give details, just said I was gathering evidence and needed someone to talk to. She hugged me tight. I'm here for you, always. 2 days later, Page 6 ran a story quoting a close friend worried about my delusions of persecution. Lauren's exact phrases. The betrayal stung deeper than I expected. I'd forgotten how loneliness was part of their playbook isolate the target until she doubts her own mind. By the end of the month, I was cornered at the annual Harper Foundation Gala. Cameras flashed as Victor and Sophia arrived together, her on his arm in shimmering silver, both radiating sympathy. Reporters swarmed me on the red carpet. Elena, do you regret the accusations? Is this about wedding stress? I smiled tightly and slipped inside. Later, on the terrace overlooking Central Park, Victor found me alone. You look tired, he said softly, almost gentle. Come back to us. We'll get you help. For a heartbeat, I saw the man I'd loved, the one who brought coffee to my office at 2 a.m. during finals, who danced with me in the kitchen to old Sinatra records. I hated that I still saw him. I straightened. I don't need help. I need justice. His mask slipped entirely. You'll never prove anything. And when you crash again, because you will, I'll be there to pick up the pieces. All of them. He walked away, leaving me shaking with rage and something dangerously close to fear. Ryan Black's office occupied the top 3 floors of a black glass tower in Hudson Yards. Everything inside was steel and concrete, minimalist to the point of severity, much like the man himself. He stood when I entered. Tall, dark hair slightly silvered at the temples, eyes a piercing gray that seemed to catalog weaknesses for later use. Miss Harper, he didn't smile. You said you had a proposition. I sat without waiting for invitation. I want Victor Kane destroyed. Professionally, financially, personally. You want the same? Let's not waste time pretending otherwise. A flicker of surprise, then genuine amusement. Direct. I like that. What do you bring to the table? Access. I still have signing authority on certain accounts, board votes, inside knowledge of every deal he's chasing. You have resources I don't. He leaned against his desk. And what do you want in return? Nothing you can't afford. Partnership on whatever's left when he falls. Ryan studied me for a long moment. Rumor said he had pancreatic cancer, stage 4, refusing treatment beyond pain management. He looked too vital for the stories to be true, but there was a sharpness to his features that spoke of constant pain. Victor cost me a company I built from nothing, he said finally. Tanked the stock with fabricated regulatory complaints, poached my best people. I've been waiting for an opening. He extended his hand. Deal. We shook on it like devils forging a pact. Our first move was surgical. Victor was courting a massive merger with a European conglomerate, his ticket to the next level of power. I fed Ryan the internal due diligence files. He used them to seed anonymous tips to journalists about conflicts of interest tied to Victor's father, Senator Kane, and certain defense contracts. The story broke on a Friday. By Monday, the merger was on ice. Victor's firm hemorrhaging clients. He retaliated fast, leaked doctored emails suggesting I'd been skimming foundation funds for personal use. The DA opened an investigation. I played the next card alone. Using the flash drive from Dr. Reed, I sent encrypted packets to 3 major outlets' ultrasounds time-stamped. Lab reports showing benzodiazepines in my system the night of the fall. My original police report claiming pushed that had been altered to accidental. The headlines shifted overnight, from heiress meltdown to attempted murder cover-up. Victor's counterattack was vicious. Private investigators dug into my reopened life every therapy session after the miscarriage, every antidepressant prescription. They twisted it into a narrative of instability. Death threats started arriving. My father, still torn, begged me to settle. I refused. One night, Ryan showed up at the penthouse unannounced, bottle of Macallan in hand. You're bleeding allies, he said without preamble. Victor's painting you as unhinged. You need a public win. I poured us both a drink, working on it. He watched me over the rim of his glass. You're good at this, cold when you need to be, but it costs you. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because he was right. Every strike felt justified. But each one carved something out of me. I'd started having nightmares again, the fall, the blood, Victor's voice saying it was my fault. Ryan set his glass down. I have terminal cancer. 6 months, maybe less. I'm not telling you for pity. I'm telling you because I have nothing to lose. Use me. The confession hung between us. I saw the exhaustion he hid behind tailored suits, the way he sometimes pressed 2 fingers to his ribs when he thought no one noticed. Then let's make sure Victor loses more, I said. We escalated. Ryan's team uncovered offshore accounts linking Victor's father to bribe money. I testified anonymously to a Senate ethics committee. The senator's re-election campaign imploded. Victor cornered me one last time outside the federal courthouse after a preliminary hearing on the embezzlement charges against Sophia. You think you've won, he hissed, face twisted. But you're becoming exactly what you hate. Ruthless. Alone. I looked him dead in the eye. Better alone than dead. Security pulled him away, but his words lingered like poison. That night, I made my worst mistake yet. In leaking the final batch of evidence recordings of Victor admitting the poisoning to Sophia, I accidentally included metadata that exposed Dr. Chen Reed as the source. 2 days later, the doctor was found dead in his garage, carbon monoxide, ruled suicide. The note read, "I can't live with what I've done." I stared at the news on my laptop until the screen blurred. Ryan found me hours later, still in the same chair. "This wasn't your fault," he said quietly. "It was..." My voice cracked. "I used him, just like Victor uses people." Ryan knelt in front of me. "Then use it. Make sure his death means something." I looked at him, really looked, and saw my own rage reflected back, tempered by something gentler. For the first time since waking up in that hospital bed, I didn't feel completely alone. The war was far from over, but the first real blood had been drawn, and it was theirs. The press conference was held in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, every seat filled with reporters, cameras rolling live on every major network. I stood at the podium in a simple black suit, hair pulled back severely, no jewelry except my mother's pearl earrings. Ryan stood to my left. Silent support. My father, finally convinced after weeks of private evidence, flanked my right. Behind us on a massive screen waited the files, bank transfers, audio recordings, medical reports, all time-stamped and authenticated by third-party forensics. I didn't waste time on tears or pleas. I laid it out like the CFO. I was cold, precise, devastating. 5 years ago, Victor Kane and Sophia Harper began a systematic campaign to strip me of my inheritance, my child, and my life. Here are the offshore accounts they used. Here is the audio of Victor admitting he switched my prenatal vitamins for a slow-acting neurotoxin. Here are the original hospital records showing bruises consistent with being pushed downstairs, altered later to read accidental fall. I clicked through each slide while the room erupted in flashes and shouted questions. Sophia, watching from the front row under subpoena, went corpse white. Victor, beside her in handcuffs pending charges, stared at me with raw hatred. When I reached the ultrasound images, grainy black and white proof of the daughter I'd never hold, the room fell silent. I let the silence stretch. This wasn't about money alone, I said quietly. It was about control, about punishing a woman who had more than they could manipulate. I'm here today not just for myself, but for every person who's been gaslit, isolated, and destroyed by someone they trusted. The hashtag justice. Elena was trending worldwide within minutes. Women shared their own stories. Donors pulled funding from Victor's firm. The senator's office was raided by FBI that afternoon. But victory tasted like ash. That night, Ryan found me on the terrace, city lights glittering below like broken glass. He didn't speak at first, just handed me a drink and stood beside me. "They're saying you're a hero," he said finally. "I don't feel like one." My voice was raw. "Doctor? Reed is dead because I dragged him into this. Lauren won't return my calls. Half the city still thinks I'm unstable." He turned to face me. "You exposed monsters. That matters." I looked at him at the pain lines etched deeper around his eyes. The way he held himself like every breath cost something. "And what about us?" "We're not exactly saints, Ryan. We ruined lives to do this. Ruined." He set his glass down. Some lives deserve ruining. Victor's moment of humanity came 2 weeks later, in a sterile visiting room at the Metropolitan Detention Center. He'd requested the meeting. I almost refused, but curiosity and something uglier won. He looked smaller in orange, cuffs clinking when he sat. The arrogance was gone, replaced by exhaustion. "I was wrong," he said without preamble, "about everything. My father, he beat the empathy out of me young, taught me weakness was death. When you had more power than I did, I couldn't stand it. I had to break you before you broke me." I waited. No satisfaction, just a hollow ache. "I loved you once," he continued, voice breaking. "The real kind, before it twisted into something sick. If you can forgive." "No," the word cut clean. "You don't get absolution from me. You get consequences." His face crumpled. For a second, I saw the boy he might have been without the poison fed to him. Then I stood and walked out. Sophia tried next, through a letter smuggled out before her transfer to upstate facility. Pages of apologies, childhood trauma, promises of reform. I read it once, then burned it. The final twist came from Senator Kane. He'd vanished the day of the raid, private jet to non-extradition paradise. But not before wiring a final threat a contract on my life, routed through shell companies we hadn't caught yet. Ryan's security team intercepted the hitter outside my building. The man sang quickly names, accounts, proof that tied the senator to decades of corruption beyond just protecting his son. We handed everything to the DOJ. The senator was captured in Dubai 6 months later, dragged back in chains. But the cost kept mounting. Nightmares worsened. I woke screaming some nights, convinced Victor's hands were around my throat again. Ryan held me through them, never asking for more than I could give. I started the Harper Foundation anew, focused on domestic abuse survivors, legal aid, safe housing. Every board meeting I attended in person, looked every woman in the eye, remembered why the scars were worth it. Public opinion fully turned. Talk shows wanted me. Magazines called me the woman who broke the blue blood machine. I declined most, spoke only when it funded the foundation. One night, Ryan collapsed during dinner. Internal bleeding. Emergency surgery bought time, but the cancer was spreading faster. He woke in ICU reaching for my hand. "Don't waste this," he rasped. "Live loud enough for both of us." I promised. The trial lasted 8 months. Federal courthouse downtown. Every day packed. Victor and Sophia separately charged conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, tax evasion, dozens of counts. The senator's case ran parallel. Corruption and obstruction added to the pile. I testified for 3 days. No tears on the stand, just facts. When Victor's defense tried to paint me as vengeful ex, I played the recording of him laughing about how easy she made it while planning the poison dosage. Jury was out 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing day was gray November. Victor got life without parole. Sophia, 45 years. The senator died in custody before his own sentencing heart attack, alone in his cell. Official cause natural. But rumors said fellow inmates didn't take kindly to men who hurt women. Karma, served cold. Victor's last look at me through the defendant's box was pure regret. Not for what he'd done for being caught. I met his eyes without flinching until they led him away. Afterward, outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. I paused on the steps. "This isn't the end," I said into the microphones. "It's the beginning. For every survivor watching, you are not alone. You are believed, and you will be heard." The foundation exploded. Donations poured in. We opened 3 new shelters that year. Ryan lasted another 14 months, long enough to see the first class of women graduate our job training program. Long enough to dance with me at a quiet Christmas party on the rooftop, city blanketed in snow. He died in our bed overlooking Central Park. Pain finally gone. I held him until morning, then scattered his ashes in the Hudson at dawn, like he'd asked. Grief was brutal, but different this time. Clean. I'd loved him honestly, no lies between us. No games. He'd taught me I could be ruthless and still kind, strategic and still human. 2 years later, I married again. Quiet ceremony in the Hamptons. Just family and foundation staff. His name was Daniel, pediatric oncologist. I'd met through charity work. Gentle eyes, steady hands, no interest in my money or my past. He proposed on a Tuesday in Central Park with coffee and a ring he'd saved for years to buy. We have a daughter now, named her Grace Ryan Harper Morales. She has her father's laugh and my mother's eyes. Some nights I still wake reaching for Ryan, or checking locks twice for threats that no longer exist. Therapy helps. Time helps more. Victor writes occasionally from prison letters. I return unopened. Sophia attempted suicide twice, survived both times. The senator's legacy is a dismantled political machine and a family name synonymous with disgrace. I kept the penthouse, but redecorated completely light colors. Plants everywhere. Grace's toys scattered like confetti. The brownstone where I lost my first child sold. Proceeds funded a maternity ward for at-risk mothers. Last month, a letter arrived anonymously. Inside, a grainy photo of Victor in the prison yard. Thinner, gray, staring at nothing. On the back, scrawled in unfamiliar handwriting. He asks about you every day. Says he finally understands what he took. I looked at it for a long moment, then dropped it in the fireplace. This morning, Grace and I walked through the park. She chased pigeons while Daniel read the paper on a bench. Sunlight filtered through bare branches, promising spring. I breathed it in cold air, coffee steam, toddler laughter, and felt something settle deep in my chest. Peace, hard won. The monsters lost. The girl they tried to bury grew thorns, then wings. And she learned to fly.